Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of The Corporate Casket. My name is Blair, and today we're going to be discussing another movie that has made its way onto The Corporate Casket, and that's going to be the movie that Ben Shapiro has recently been a part of. Now, I'm no Ben Shapiro fan. I think that's probably fairly obvious without me having to say it, but we're not really going to get into everything he's done or we'd be here a while, so we're going to start by touching on who he is, his background, and then we'll dive right into this movie that he was a part of in the creation of or whatever, and it's about a school shooting and it's just kind of glorifying it. So let's just start by diving into this, and we're going to go through the background up to what happened to potentially get to this point and why this just most certainly surpasses the line of questionable and goes directly into garbage fire territory. So let's get started. Oh, and I forgot, but we're obviously going to be talking about sensitive subjects today, including school shootings, glorification of mass murder, that kind of stuff. So if this is something that's a little bit sensitive of a topic for you, this is not the episode for you. So sorry about that, but I'll see you in the next one. So let's start with who Ben Shapiro is. He grew up in a conservative Jewish family, and Ben transitioned to Orthodox Judaism at the age of 9. He lived in LA, his parents and family were Reagan Republicans, and they often had political discussions around the dinner table. Does he have any self-awareness when he made that comment? Like, no? Okay. Anyway, now that we've got a pretty basic picture of who he is, just a snapshot really, let's get into the reason why we're here today, and that's this movie.
Is that Chris Jellick over there?
Is he doing something completely weird?
Senior prank day. But we'll see all kinds of dumb stuff today. Swim captain will have Thai food delivered to class, and Becky Vaughn will set up her homemade slip and slide.
This is high school. Nothing that happens here matters in the real world.
Now, this movie is truly, and I mean truly upsetting. Again, if you're sensitive to the topic of gun violence and school shootings, this might be the point where you'll want to leave for sure. And I definitely understand. It's literally been compared to Die Hard, even in positive reviews. It's Die Hard, but in a school, one review says. That's not how school shootings work, though. It's not some crazy, high-intense action movie with explosions. I'm going to get into real accounts of school shootings and debunk this movie as we go along. But to start, I'm going to say that I don't think all depictions of school shootings are wrong or that they cannot be done well or reenacted in a way that can be used as a learning experience. There's one show called Acorn, a Canadian cop show, that I believe does this pretty well. I was able to find an episode online, and when I rewatched it, I personally believe that it shows the intensity and horror of the situation, as well as the somber "why did this happen" aspect too. It's a tragedy, and Acorn clearly shows that. Even BuzzFeed has said that school shooting episodes need to stop and this shouldn't be a fad or a trend. About the same time, HuffPost said they're more relevant than ever, and The Hollywood Reporter said popular series have dramatized the fear and tragedy. Regardless of whether you think school shootings should be in a movie or television show or not, I think we can all agree that if they are, it has to be done respectfully. At the end of the day, this is about a shooter murdering children. It's not a stunt movie, it's not Die Hard. This has happened before, and unfortunately, it's probably going to happen again. So that's why when I learned that Shapiro, of all people, decided to make a movie about this, well, I didn't really have much hope for it that it was going to be respectful. First of all, it's pretty obvious from the trailer alone that this is a pro-gun stance shoved into a movie about a school shooting.
In between breath, take the shot.
You've done really good out there, kid.
The main character, a young woman, has experience hunting and using guns, so we already know based on the trailer that she's going to save the day because she has experience handling a gun. To play devil's advocate with this movie for just a moment, couldn't a gun control advocate argue that with better restrictions, no one would have to save the day at all? Isn't it better that no shooting occurs in the first place as opposed to a different person with a weapon saving the day after students are already injured or killed? Again, I'm not saying that you should be pro or anti-gun, but this movie appears to have a pretty set narrative when going through this entire movie. Hell, after the movie was released, the film's second assistant director asked if there was a way to remove her name from the crew list because she didn't want her name associated with the project. Daily Beast wrote about the other people on this movie and stated, "Directed by Kyle Rankin, Run, Hide, Fight follows a group of high school teenagers fighting for their lives against live streaming gunmen. Starring Isabel May, Thomas Jane, and Radha Mitchell, The Actioner is produced by Dallas Saunier and Amanda Presmick, the team behind Cinestate, a Dallas-based movie studio specializing in populist films for the Trump crowd like Dragged Across Concrete, a nasty piece of police brutality apologia starring Mel Gibson. Cinestate had a virtual monopoly on film production in the Dallas region, where film work is relatively scarce, and took full advantage, pressuring its crew into 18-hour days with no overtime pay and forcing them into compromising situations. The most hazardous of which concerned their producing partner, Adam Donahue. In April of 2020, Donahue, co-producer of A Ghost Story and the Cinestate films Satanic Panic, VFW, and Run, Hide, Fight, was arrested on suspicion of sexual assault of a minor after a woman in the Texas film scene came forward alleging he'd raped her when she was 16. 2 months later, the Daily Beast published a detailed investigation into Donahue and Cinestate, revealing that Saunier and Presmick had for years not only turned a blind eye to Donahue's predatory behavior, but given him more power and authority within the company, including controlling employees' hours and payment. Cinestate effectively shuttered in the wake of the story. The final films created under their banner were Till Death, a yet-to-be-released romantic comedy starring Jason Sudeikis, and Run, Hide, Fight. Now, if these were the kind of people that worked on this movie, I wouldn't support it for that reason alone. For God's sake, the assistant director that wanted her name removed, Haynes, said that she was one of Donahue's victims as well. She even managed to capture audio of him sexually harassing her, but there was never an apology or any recognition from the crew of what happened. The producers, Saunier and Presmick, brushed aside allegations during other movies as well. One actor, Fred Williamson, was accused of groping an assistant costume designer and pressuring Ruby Modine into performing a sex scene. Another actor, Johnny Messner, apparently exposed himself to a costume designer too. I can't even keep up with the allegations here. The point is that if Saunier and Presmick are in charge, sexual assault is ignored. And considering that Shapiro has argued for the end of the Me Too movement and made a mockery of it, well, the Daily Beast said it's little surprise the three of them would team up. But these aren't the only issues the movie had on set either. In the trailer, the main character Zoe and her father were hunting deer. Well, this movie can't say no animals were harmed in the making of this movie because they actually broke a bunch of codes in order to get that specific hunting shot. During pre-production, Rose, the makeup artist, was shocked to learn that a skeleton crew had gone off and filmed the slaughter of a deer, which she says was in violation of a number of film and hunting regulations. I spoke to 2 other crew members who back up Rose's account. The Daily Wire says they were unaware of this occurring. They hired a local hunter, went on his land, and filmed the deer being shot. Then they took the deer and froze it so they could pull it out again for close-ups with the actual actors, says Rose. Saunier claims that it is the legal harvest of a registered buck and that the SAG-AFTRA took no issue with the episode. When Rose voiced her concerns over the deer to Donahue, she says he mocked and derided her. He went off on me in a very condescending way, she recalls. He got very heated and told me I was either with them or against them. Rose quit the film the next day. Looking back on the experience, she can't believe that Donahue, who again has been arrested for the rape of a 16-year-old girl, was allowed to serve as executive producer of a high school set film with a number of youngsters on set. There were hundreds of minors on that set who were all extras, and I don't think the crew was big enough to have eyes on all of them, and that is a very creepy thing for me to think about, says Rose. And I've got to agree with her here. I'm not sure I want to think about that either. Unfortunately, these are only the logistics and the background. So, what about this dumpster fire of a movie? Exactly, what's going on? What makes it so bad? Well, I watched it, the whole thing. Originally, I felt like the trailer would have given me plenty to work with, and I didn't really want to endure watching this movie for 2 hours. But I know that sometimes trailers can take things out of context to make things look a certain way, and I didn't want to at least give this a fair chance if I was going to really review this. Bad people can still do good things at times, just as how good people can also do bad things. So, hey, maybe these people can make a good movie, right? I promise I entered into this with the least amount of bias that I possibly could. But I'm telling you right now, it is every bit as terrible as I unfortunately hoped it would not be. Alright, so We start off again at the beginning of the movie with Zoe Hull killing a deer with her dad. The dialogue feels extremely unnatural and clunky to me. Her father is trying to tell her that she's closed off, and her best friend says, "You've been saying you're fighting with your dad lately." Like, you get the idea.
I think we need to see somebody again.
And by we, you mean me?
No, I mean us. Hey, that look in your eye. Guys in my unit had that look.
Maybe there's a brochure you can hand me so I can go?
It sounds like someone who hasn't been to high school in about 50 years wrote all the conversations, which might as well be accurate at this point. The first event happens about 15 minutes in, when a kid starts a fire some distance away from the school, and if I had to guess, it's to distract EMTs. Then a backpack is left by the front desk. Then another shed some distance away explodes, and Zoe is picturing her mom who passed away in the bathroom talking to her. After some drama about prom, the attack begins. A giant van smashes into the cafeteria, the driver shoots 2 students right out the gate, and a female shooter starts firing into the air across the cafeteria. Then a third shooter has a gun, the one that left the backpack by the front desk. He shoots a third student that's running away, and a fourth shooter steps out of the van and says, "Trigger warning." So we've got 4 shooters, a very coordinated attack, and one of the female shooters makes out with one of the males in front of everyone, because that's a thing. And I'm not making this up. I wish I was, honestly. So anyway, they intimidate some students with the guns. They just shoot others. It's incredibly random. And we're only about 20 minutes into the movie at this point, and this just simply isn't how most shootings work statistically. I'm not saying that this could never, ever happen, but it's just really ridiculous, and it makes a mockery of the entire situation. In over 80% of school shootings, the attacker acts alone. Even in the terms run, hide, fight, in which the movie title is based upon, have been criticized because it doesn't include freeze, which many people's natural response is to a traumatic scenario. One source states, if the model did a better job of recognizing the likelihood of a freeze, educating potential victims about the dangers, and helping to stimulate the mindset and mental preparation necessary to break it, it would be far more effective. As it is, it simply ignores the most likely and dangerous of responses, panic-induced paralysis, leaving potential victims completely unprepared for the reality of an attack. It just bothers me that everyone in the cafeteria is sitting there, naturally frozen in fear, but Zoe is the only one who runs and seems to get away. Of course she manages to run. Zoe was able to run because she was outside the cafeteria. She'd been in the bathroom when the van broke through. Zoe was lucky to not be there when things started. Freezing and going along with what the gunman wanted was the only option for the other students there. It's not as if, oh, Zoe is so much smarter with what to do in this situation. She just literally happened to be at the right place at the right time. Anyway, Zoe runs off, and these shooters walk around the cafeteria saying they're in charge now, like a bad movie villain, like a knockoff Joker. The shooters demand that everyone get out their phones, tell everyone what's happening, and live stream while the fire department is wrapped up handling the fires.
Okay, we are in charge now, so please pull out whichever app you use to do live streaming video. Get them up and running and point it at me. Now! Get down on the ground!
Again, it's not even a school shooting at this point. Shootings don't work like this typically with immediate hostage situations. This scenario reminds me of how robbers would hold up a bank, not how a shooter typically acts in a school shooting. I'm trying hard here to give this movie the benefit of the doubt, but this just is not it. It's time to take a break from today's episode to just really quickly thank our sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh cuts out stressful meal planning and grocery store trips, which God knows I hate those, so that you can enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in about 30 minutes or less. HelloFresh offers over 23 recipes every single week, featuring a range of flavors, cuisines, and ingredients so you'll never get bored. And eating healthier has never been easier with low-cal, carb-smart, vegetarian, and pescatarian options every single week. Cut down on grocery bills by saving up to 40% instead of shopping at your local store. HelloFresh delivers pre-portioned ingredients so you're not overbuying, which is a burden on the planet and your wallet. HelloFresh's Easy Eats offerings has a ton of quick and easy meal solutions like 10 to 20 minute meals, low prep recipes, and quick breakfasts and lunches. Perfect for my busy schedule, but I'm sure it's good for you guys too. I just can't do effort in food. I'm just not that person, so this is really easy for me. So if you want to get started today with HelloFresh, make sure to go to hellofresh.com/casket10 and use code casket10 for 10 free meals, including free shipping. Get started today with America's #1 meal kit. Go to hellofresh.com/casket10, use casket10 for 10 free meals, including free shipping. According to one source, about half of the school shooting incidents lasted 15 minutes or less, from the beginning of the shooting until the attacker stopped shooting, was apprehended, surrendered, or killed by law enforcement or by suicide at the end of the incident. For example, the shooter, whose name has been redacted, shot his way into Sandy Hook Elementary School at 9:35 a.m. and shot himself in the head at 9:40 a.m., and it was fewer than 5 minutes from the time the first 911 call was placed until he shot himself. Most school shootings were not stopped by law enforcement intervention because of their short duration. This hostage situation run, hide, fight was going on about isn't accurate. You can argue it's a fantastic movie if you want, but it can't be argued that it does the situation any justice. The shooters even tried to bring weird modern political points into it. About a half hour in, one of the shooters takes a student's phone and tells the man on the other end, "Hi, I'm sending my thoughts and prayers during this difficult time," and then hangs up. I get this is supposed to be a commentary on how those words can sound so hollow after tragic incidents, but having a shooter say this during a movie that does not do it justice or, really go on about the seriousness of what the tragedy of a school shooting really is, then it's kind of just insulting. Some argue that the film's action sequences are controversial, but praise the director for not glorifying the shooters. One article states, the film's violence is more than what would be needed to move the plot along. Blasphemy and crude language occur throughout, along with one scene of female nudity. The Daily Wire principals say many of these elements are necessary in truth-telling art. Viewers may say otherwise. The thing is, I do personally feel that this film glorifies the shooters with this thoughts and prayers line, as well as many other points in the movie. It's like they're trying to make the shooters seem more socially aware, making them out to be these well-coordinated rebels, preaching about how school meetings publicly voted and how they handle school shootings and how it's not helping the students in this situation. It's like the shooter's entire motivation is to prove that the school can't help you, not without a good guy with a gun, like Zoe. In my opinion, it's despicable for a movie about a school shooting to have said shooters talk about their beliefs on guns and how shootings are handled to the hostages in the cafeteria. Not only does it make it an actual mockery of shootings, but it's so obvious that it's just pushing an agenda down the throats of the viewer. To top it off, Zoe actually did escape the school 32 minutes into the movie. She made it out, but rather than call police or go get help, she goes right back inside. And yes, you heard that right. She goes back inside the school without getting any help. And yet again, the movie has to make political points, and the movie, in my opinion, does in fact glorify these shooters. 34 minutes in, a security guard barges in and the shooter says, and I quote, well, 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 if it isn't our friendly neighborhood security guard. As if it isn't sad enough that they only pay you $12 an hour to defend us, they expect you to do it without a gun. Stop using a school shooting movie to make a political point. For fuck's sake, stop it. The shooter goes on and on about how he's been plotting this, how he made a copy of the principal's key, the security guard pees his pants, and it's just like, I swear this whole movie is just like this weird, I don't even want to say it's pro-gun propaganda. It's uncomfortable is what this is. This is not typical of how a school shooting happens when it does. And this glorification and turning this into some kind of like weird action movie is exactly what future shooters would want. They want to be glorified. They want their names to be said, and they want to be commemorated publicly for the shit that they did. Zoe, our lead character, doesn't even try to get any kind of help from law enforcement. And again, this gang-like group of coordinated shooters or semi-coordinated shooters is not common. And I really doubt the shooters would be marching around like a poorly written movie villain saying pro-gun lines from time to time. And before I get people trying to dispute with me the whole gang-like thing and tell me about the Columbine shooting because there were 2 people there, again, that is unprecedented, horrific, and atypical of a normal situation. And my God, the fact that I can say of a normal school shooting versus an atypical school shooting, how fucking horrific is that? Just to say that there is even a comparison, but I digress. Anyway, we're only about 40 minutes into this movie now, so at this point, the fire alarm is pulled by Zoe, of course. I don't know why the principal, security guard, or literally anyone fucking else wouldn't have pulled it already, but okay. There are fire drills and active shooter drills at schools now, and there have been for quite some time, so this reads as odd to me that the protagonist has to be the one to start the drill when, again, the security guard easily could have minutes before her in the movie. But I'm sorry, he was too busy changing his pants, I guess. They really make it seem that every single fucking person is incompetent except Zoe because she shot a gun. After this, the backpack goes off and an officer dies from the explosion, and it seems like that was to keep anyone from coming through the front door, though it seems more like pointless violence for the sake of keeping the movie interesting. After that, Zoe pretends to be dead to avoid being shot before she's pleading with classrooms under lockdown to try and escape. Then, around the 50-minute mark, that's when she tries to defend herself with a locker. Now, for those of you that have seen me look over this on my Twitch stream, Oz Media joined me on this, and we both ranted about how a locker won't actually defend you from gunfire, and I do stand by that. But I will say that the locker didn't defend Zoe. It was a handgun, not a sniper rifle, that this specific shooter was holding, and even then you can clearly see a bullet hole where it goes through. So I'll admit I was wrong about one part, when Oz and I were making fun of the trailer for implying a locker can protect against a sniper rifle. The locker didn't really help Zoe much. She was shot in the leg, but hey, that's why we're watching this whole movie now, to make sure I get the full fleshed out clarity of what the plot was supposed to be. Around the 52-minute mark of the movie, the head shooter, Tristan, tells the Spanish teacher that he promises not to shoot anyone if she takes off her shirt, around the same time Zoe wrestles the gun away from the female shooter and kills her in the process. And yes, this is really happening. The shooter makes the Spanish teacher take her shirt off, and oh, as an added fucking bonus, they seem to make a mockery of mental illness too. Around the 58-minute mark, one of the shooters is talking to himself, and he does this multiple times, and says, "No, he left me in charge, not you. This is my body," referring to the fact that he's the lone gunman at the cafeteria while Tristan and the other shooter are off terrorizing the rest of the school. One article makes fun of this fact, as well as the whole damn movie itself, really, and it says, "The four evildoers put into action a remarkably convoluted supervillain-style plan under the ringleadership of a knife-wielding maniac called Tristan. He looks about 30, sure, but his muddled manifesto has something to do with social media, which is how you, fellow kids, know he's actually a disaffected modern teenager. And in case we don't get the message of his sick perversity, he later makes a pretty Spanish teacher strip at knife point. And what's worse, orders Hawaiian pizza. His chief henchman is Chris, a big lug with an itchy trigger finger, some sort of mental illness, and a big ol' gay crush on Tristan, while on shotgun duty we have bullied fat kid Kip. Rounding out Tristan Zod's kill-happy entourage, there's Chris's sister Anna. To those heavy eye makeup and studs attitude, I, as a mildly grunge goth inclined yet fundamentally under-murderous teenager myself back in the day, take personal offense. At literally no point in this weirdly lumbering, sluggish movie's narrative does its grotesque tastelessness ever appear to have occurred to anyone involved. Make no mistake, this is not a controversial take on the horrifying national scourge that is school shootings. There is no elephant in this room. All it is instead is a gratuitously inept attempt to take two things that should never have been brought into contact: the disease that is America's sickening tradition of teenage gun crime, and the plot of John McTierman's 1988 Christmas classic, Die Hard with Attendance. Times are tough, and we're all partial to a little trashy shoot-'em-up entertainment to pass a long pandemic day, but please, for your own good, run from, hide from, and fight the urge to make it run, hide, fight. And also please note, this article isn't calling Chris gay as an insult. The movie literally states that the two were together, which, you know, of course, the only gay couple explicitly shown are the shooters, which also statistically is not factual either. But anyway, about an hour and 5 minutes into the movie, after Zoe tells one of the shooters off, she's heading back to the cafeteria to confront Tristan and the other shooter left, Chris. Zoe ends up getting on the phone with the sheriff and convincing him to get the news footage off the school so that students can escape without the shooters being able to watch the news footage. After that, Zoe and Tristan are talking on the phone, and he says he's going to kill one person every 5 minutes Zoe doesn't show her face. Zoe heads towards the cafeteria, and her father, who's been watching the livestream, moves to try and use his sniper rifle to take them down. Zoe then gives the bullied kid, Kip, his gun back and demands that he join her in taking down Tristan and the other shooters. Kip tries to tell the shooters to put the guns down, they kill him instead and end up shooting Lewis, her friend and the one holding the camera. Zoe kisses Lewis and then tells her that he believes the van in the cafeteria is rigged to explode, and Zoe and Chris fight in the chemistry lab. Her dad manages to use his sniper rifle to take out Chris before he kills her, though he's quickly apprehended by a SWAT team. I don't know how the hell he did this in the first place, to be totally honest. Like, you'd think that whole area would be just a hair more secure by, like, what's going on in there, but okay. But at the end, Tristan is the only one left, and he ends up burning to death as Zoe, naturally, is the hero at the end of the story. If this were an action movie, I'd have far less criticism of it. But the fact that this die-hard action movie was portrayed as a school shooting is pretty horrific. In the end, Zoe kills yet another person that was clearly involved in orchestrating the shooting, even though he wasn't a shooter himself. So I guess we're now advocating to use guns to kill people that we suspect have something to do with a crime in general. Interesting. Truth be told, I didn't expect this movie to be as awful as it was. One article says it's a great action movie, solid, suspenseful, and I don't totally disagree with that. I was rooting for Zoe and feeling some suspense throughout the film, sure. But the concept of an action movie set during a school shooting isn't just distasteful, as the article calls it. It's minimizing and dramatizing what school shootings are. I wish the directors actually consulted some survivors and based their movie off of their stories, then let the audience make up their own mind about gun rights instead of pushing a message onto them. Not to mention, many survivors of these school shootings do advocate for more control. So it's just that much more insulting to have your school shooting movie push the opposite message. Parkland school shooting survivors have struggled with PTSD, and 2 of them, as well as another student who survived Sandy Hook, have committed suicide. Survivor's guilt is a very real issue among school shooting survivors, and an American Psychological Association has an entire article about the trauma's long-lasting effects. One New York Times article about the Parkland shooting even has an account from a young woman that can shoot a gun in it. Just because she understood how to fire a weapon didn't mean she was better off than the other students, aside from recognizing the sound. She didn't suddenly leap into action and become the hero as this movie leads you to believe. Here's what it actually said. As the shots rang, the classmates looked at one another, some confused by the sound. Kelly Plower knew better. 3 years before, her father had taught her how to shoot a handgun for protection. So, when the popping sound whizzed right through the space between her ears and the New Beats headphones she was holding away from her head, she knew it was gunfire. She jumped from her desk as the third pop sounded. By then, everyone knew. They were in the midst of a mass shooting, one that may be taught in future history classes as one of the nation's worst. The police say the gunman loaded his AR-15 rifle in a stairwell and, in a little more than 6 minutes, killed 17 after spraying 3 classrooms from the doorways. When he began firing through the locked door of their class, shattering the glass pane, Caitlin and several others scrambled to the closest corner. But it was across the door with no cover. I looked around and I was like, we are directly in the line of fire, we have to move, she recalled on a recent afternoon. They moved farther along the window wall and Caitlin, 18, pushed the metal laptop cabinet out so more students could squeeze behind it. The class was terrified, but that fear had to be stifled. Matthew Sitar, 17, focused on counting the minutes before the police would arrive, but the same surreal thought kept intruding. Wow, I am actually going to die in a school shooting. Aliyah remembers thinking if she was going to die, please let it be quick, painless, instant. Kelly's mind drifted to the last time her family went whitewater rafting in Mountain City, Tennessee. I'm not trying to take anyone's guns away by criticizing this movie, okay? I don't think there shouldn't be any guns, simply that it shouldn't be quite so easy to get one in some states. But when you hear firsthand what actually happened from the survivor's perspective, well, I don't know how anyone can truly justify what happened and then to even go off and make a school shooting movie that's pro-gun and glorifies the shooters. Believe what you want about guns, but this movie is horrible taste at best, and at worst was nothing more than pro-gun propaganda that intentionally misrepresented how school shootings work and try to make a point out of it.
People aren't gonna remember you.
No?
They're gonna remember me.
Anyways, it ultimately doesn't surprise me that Ben Shapiro and his news site, The Daily Wire, would distribute and support something like this. It just disappoints me, honestly. But that is where I'm going to end today's episode of The Corporate Casket. I can't really say I hope you enjoyed it, but I do hope you learned something, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to so you never miss another upload. I upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you for making it to another episode of the Corporate Casket. Love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.